Welcome to this video. We're going to be talking about teaching our children as mothers, and as we go throughout this video, I'm going to be preparing some things for my husband's birthday and just including my children in that and just getting ready for a little celebration. So welcome to the video. My name is Amy. I'm a city girl who married a southern country boy and now is a blessed homemaker wife and mama to our 4 children here in our little homestead here in Mississippi. Thank you so much for clicking on this video and choosing to spend a little time with me. I share a new video each week centered around all things homemaking, home cooking, home birthing, a little bit of homeschooling, but I did not grow up in this world of being home, gardening, preserving, raising and butchering our own animals, and cooking meals from scratch. But I have learned a lot along the way and want to bring you all along in this continued learning process and the beautiful blessing of a slow and simple life. Before we start, let's talk about a couple of verses in Deuteronomy 6 that kind of lead us into what we're going to talk about today. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk to them when you're at home, when you're on the road, when you're going to bed, and when you're getting up. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And I think this just shows the importance of teaching our children about the Lord, which is the first thing we're going to talk about. Constantly, all day long, when we're at home, when we're on the road, when we're going to bed, anytime throughout the day, always weaving the Lord into our teaching of them. So let's talk about the important job mothers have of teaching our children. So in Proverbs 1:8, the verse says, "My child, listen when your father corrects you and don't neglect your mother's instructions." So specifically right there, it's letting us know that mothers are to instruct. Not saying that mothers don't correct as well, but that is the first command in that verse to the father, and the mother is to instruct. So finding a way to teach them biblical knowledge is the first and most important thing we will ever teach our children. Fighting for their soul, teaching them biblical knowledge. So we have to correct our children, use it as an example to share the gospel. When we as mothers mess up, humble ourselves and let our children know we've messed up and ask them for forgiveness. Even ask them maybe to pray for you and hold you accountable as a mama. And I know that's hard sometimes to apologize and to admit that we were wrong when we might have lost our cool, lost our temper in a situation. But it is so important to teach this and model this to our children so that they learn when they mess up to ask for our forgiveness and pray for them as well. When they mess up, always remind them how the Lord extends grace and mercy to us when we mess up, and we should extend that to our children as well. And teaching them that continuously, modeling them. I think that modeling is the number one way we teach our children. I'll talk more on that in just a minute. So I once heard this quote that really stuck with me. A child's understanding of who God is and what he is like is most influenced by the character of their father and their mother and their treatment towards the child. So that's really powerful, knowing that our children, the way we treat our children is kind of how our children understand God, especially at the very young age when they're still grasping the concept of God and who he is and how wonderful he is. And that goes back to how we treat them as parents. So as parents, specifically mothers we're talking about in this video, our children are more influenced by what we do and say to others, to them, than what we are actually trying to teach them. And wow, that's mind-blowing, because I'm always teaching my children Bible verses and we're learning hymns, and I'm always reminding them to love each other, love their siblings as God loves us. But then they watch me every day. And I have to constantly ask myself, am I keeping my calm in a chaotic situation? I'm teaching them how to manage their emotions in situations by how I do that. Am I slow to anger towards them when they mess up? And no, I'm not always. And that's something I'm constantly asking the Lord to help me in that area. Do I always submit and respect my husband? Because they are watching that and they are learning, and that is teaching them more than me actually sitting them down teaching them about Proverbs 31 and the Proverbs 31 woman, and for my son to find that wife and for my daughters to become that wife. I talked a little bit in a couple of videos back about Proverbs 31 and how I've been teaching that to my son specifically, and then my daughters as well. But for my son to find a godly wife, but more so than me sitting down teaching him those verses and telling him what the Lord says about that in the Bible, he is watching me as a wife and my husband as a husband and how we interact, for learning how to interact in his future marriage, my daughters as well. Do I react calmly when someone cuts me off in traffic? That's always a hard one, and a lot of parents, I think, would struggle with that. Kids are watching. So my children are watching every bit of this, whether I like it or not, and this is the most influential way I'm teaching them about being a God-following human. And the longer I've been a mother, the more I've realized I cannot mother and I cannot teach my children these things and I cannot model these things without the Lord. When I try to teach them, discipline them, guide them, lead them in my own flesh, I fail every time. So lean into the Lord daily, and as He's teaching you things, just teach them right along to your children. It doesn't have to be fancy, but remember, this biblical teaching goes much deeper than just teaching Bible verses and hymns, which are lovely, and I love doing that with my kids. But they are watching us daily, and that's the best biblical teaching that we can offer them. So along with teaching our children biblical knowledge, life skills like we're talking about in this video, also come in things like teaching our children to ride a bike. Which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, which is Glerc Bikes. This is a company specializing in children's bicycles. Glerc is passionate about providing a secure and joyous biking experience for your child. The Glerc bike comes about 85% assembled. The rest of the assembly will take only about 15 or 20 minutes. You'll just be putting together the handlebars, the seat, the front wheel, the bike basket if yours comes with that accessory, and ours came with the doll seat. And I actually specifically picked this bike because it came with the doll seat, because I knew my 3-year-old was going to absolutely love the addition of the bike seat for her doll that goes everywhere with her. So they have a lot of different colors to choose from. They have more muted vintagey looking bikes, which I preferably love, but I knew my daughter would love this bike that we chose for her because of its bright pink colors and the doll seat. So they have a lot of options to choose from. The bikes are built with a sturdy high-10 steel frame and equipped with 2.4-inch wide tires, providing greater safety for your young child to ride. You can get them with training wheels. You can get the balance bikes for toddlers, or you can just get a bike for an older child. We did get a bike with training wheels, but we actually don't use training wheels. In the past with our children, we haven't. So we start all of our children at about 1 or 2 years old on a balance bike, where they're just learning the motion of balancing a bike. And then between the ages of 3 and 4, which is where my daughter is right now, we transition them to a full-size pedal bike that is their size. We do take the training wheels off. This is completely optional. This is just how we do bikes with our kids. Like, we're mastering the art of pedaling and hoping to have lots of fun on this new bike in this fall and upcoming winter months. We have very mild climates here in Mississippi, so this is actually the perfect bike riding weather for us here in the fall. Again, Glerc is passionate about enhancing the riding experience for your child. They've included features that truly make a difference in these bikes. The shorter height distance for different age children makes it easier for them to get on and off and grasp and squeeze the handlebars. The removable bike basket offers a fun little accessory for your kids to enjoy. We have loved teaching our daughter to ride her bike on the Glerc bikes. So this would be a wonderful Christmas gift for your child if you are in the market for buying a new bike for your child. If you have a little girl who has a favorite doll, she will love this bike like my daughter does with the doll seat. That's by far the most favorite perk of hers. And I also forgot to mention, all of the Glerc bikes come with a helmet to color coordinate with your child's bike. So if you're in the market for a bike for your child this Christmas, be sure to check out Glerc Bikes using my link in the description box with code AMMIE for an additional $10 off. They have 25% all products going on right now for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So check out Glerc Bikes. I think you're really going to love them as much as we do. So next, let's talk about teaching our children life skills. So this goes from everything to working outside with our animals, whatever outside tasks you might have, whether you have a farm or whether you have pets, teaching your children those little life skills. Washing dishes. My 5-year-old and my 3-year-old have actually been helping me do dishes since they were about 1.5, 2 years old, kind of just splashing at the sink. And yes, this takes longer. This takes more time to clean it up. It takes more patience. But I'm just now seeing the fruits of that pay off, because my 3 and my 5-year-old now have actually been doing the dishes for on and off here for about a month now. I asked one day, I just let them go with it. I was actually my daughter who wanted to help wash the dishes. I'd had the sink full of water, and I think the bubbly suds really intrigued her. So I just let her take over, and I was in awe of how carefully she handled each jar and used the little bottle brush to wash them, get them nice and sparkly. And it wasn't long before my son came up and was intrigued by what she was doing and wanted to help rinse. So I then had a full dishwashing crew, and they were so proud to be able to help me. It really just reminded me how teaching them these skills when they are young and letting them be part of bringing them into the kitchen, bringing them into the things I'm doing daily, really teaches them. And again, modeling that to them, modeling taking care of your home, modeling taking care of your animals, your kitchen, cooking food, it just teaches them more than anything we could physically sit down and teach them about it. I went on and praised them and thanked them so much for how much they helped me, and they were just so proud of themselves for being able to help. And then since then, they've asked several times a week. I never make them do this job, but they've requested, and I've let them, and I'm just so thankful that I have let them be in that position of playing in the sink. And now my third daughter now is kind of in the stage of wanting to kind of splash in the sink and splash water around and kind of make a mess in the kitchen by the sink. But I know that in about a year it's going to pay off, and she is going to want to be washing dishes with them, and it's just so lovely. And kids love doing this kind of stuff, actually feeling like they're doing a real job. This even goes to daily things like vacuuming, wiping, mopping, and of course they're not going to do these things perfectly, but if we can let go of that for a season and just let them learn and let them try, think how good they're going to be at helping at these tasks when they are older, and they are going to do them more to our standards and be really good at it. And then we'll talk about cooking, and this is a really big one. I get comments every now and then when I share clips of cooking with my children and how I cook with them, or how I make sure they're safe cooking with me, things like that. So when I'm in the kitchen, my kids are allowed to always bring bar stools up and watch closely. If they're behaving and not like yelling and hollering, if they are acting out a bit, I'll ask them to step out of the kitchen, because the kitchen needs to be a calm place where we cook food and enjoy time together. So sometimes they just watch, sometimes they ask me to help, but nonetheless, they can watch every part of the cooking process. And I try, not perfect at this, but try to always welcome them in the kitchen and not try to run them off. So there's even times when I've been able to ask my older two to continue chopping some veggies or stirring the meat while I change the baby's diaper or go breastfeed or something like that. Our children are far more capable than we give them credit for. So let's talk about getting burned, because I think that's the fear of every mother. And while this is a legitimate fear, this is why I think most people, most parents, most mothers don't let their children cook. And it can be scary, but this is how we approach that. So I start by letting my children flip pancakes, because that's a really simple thing, and they can easily start doing that around age 2, 2.5. They are, of course, flipping the pancakes with my help on the spatula, and we're talking about how the pan is hot and keeping our arm well above that, and they're just learning that motion. And I usually only let them do the second flip, not the first flip for the pancakes, by the way. So then the flip to the plate, or to the serving platter. And then we move on to eggs. I let them stir in scrambled eggs or learn to flip fried eggs with my help. They are also able to sprinkle salt and pepper on top. And this is letting them feel heat from the skillet or the griddle and learn the awareness of heat at the oven. I'm constantly reminding them that this is hot, and they already know this word because they've tasted foods that are hot, like hot soup, hot chocolate, things like that. So eventually, my children will bump their arm or their finger on a hot pan, and they will feel that this is uncomfortably warm. They usually jerk away immediately. I've never had a kid just leave their hand there, their arm there, and usually no harm is ever done. Usually enough for them to understand to respect the oven space and to avoid touching it again. And then they become really careful around this space. They learn really quick, and no, it's not like they're getting third-degree burns. This is like minimal touching for like 1 second. So in the case of a mild burn, you can always use lavender essential oil. We have that on hand, which works great. I use it on myself, but I've never had to use it on my children. So that is how we approach cooking. And now my 5-year-old is able to stir meat. He's able to flip eggs. He's able to flip pancakes, stir soups, stir things on the oven, and know how to be aware of the heat and not to touch that. Great to look back and see that you put that effort in the forefront and now have these great kitchen helpers. So let's talk about chopping and knives. So I think this is another fear of parents in the kitchen about kids being around knives, and this is a legitimate fear, because this can cause true harm to your children if there are not boundaries and learning and teaching surrounding this. So I know everyone won't agree with this, but I'll just kind of share with you how we do it. So I have our chopping knives on a magnetic strip in our kitchen. You'll have all seen it if you've been on my channel. And I got a comment recently about our knives being in reach of our children and they can reach them and that it's not safe. And yes, understand, if your children know nothing about knives and you've not taught them this, then that could be very dangerous. But I'll go ahead and tell you, these are not our butchering, meat harvesting knives that are very, very sharp. These are actually really dull knives that my kids know how to use and work with. So we actually start out with kid knives that they can use around like age 1, cutting bananas and really soft fruits and food. So they get that motion. This helps them feel satisfied in helping me and feel very accomplished. So by age about 3.5, I do let them start chopping with a very dull knife in the kitchen. Actually, all of our knives are pretty dull because I purposely keep them that way because I don't want children getting legitimately hurt with a knife. This might not be as always convenient for me, not using a super sharp knife, but it's not that big of a deal. So the kids know they can use these knives if they are at the counter with me and we are chopping together, or I give them permission to chop something. And again, these are very dull. None of my kids have ever gotten cut with a knife, and I pray that never happens. But with all the practicing we do, I think that they are very respectful of knives and how they can be helpful or how they can be harmful. So we do have one Nakano knife that I use for most of my veggie chopping, and they know that that's only my knife and they are not allowed to use that knife, and they've respected this. So they have seen me personally get cut a few times, and they've learned the dangers that knives can pose and have learned to respect them. Again, allowing them the space constantly around me, watching me in the kitchen, watching me learn from my mistakes has been one of the most important parts of teaching them how to cook and how to be in the kitchen and how to move freely and fluidly and quickly in a kitchen. And they just learn so much by watching. I think another issue some mothers have with letting their kids cook is it takes 15,000 times as long. And yes, it does. And yes, sometimes this is frustrating. And sometimes after a long day, I'm just ready to get in the kitchen and get in and out. And then when my children comes up and wants to help, and I have to pray to God to give me patience to teach them in this moment, to let them in my space in this moment. And it isn't always easy, but He is so merciful and graceful in that area and will make a beautiful bond and a beautiful learning experience if you just welcome that child in, especially on those days that you're really not feeling it. Yes, it takes longer, but start earlier. I try to start dinner by about 4 o'clock every night so we can make sure we're eating by 5:30 or 6. And forget about meeting perfect expectations. Realize that you are giving your children a gift by letting go of control in this space. This doesn't have to be every meal that you have to let them come in. My children actually don't want to help me every meal. They like playing together and being children, but I let them take control over a task, and then I'm in awe of how well they actually can do. Letting go of every carrot being chopped perfectly the same, or every potato, or letting go of having the perfect noodles when we're making noodles for lasagna or spaghetti, letting go of having perfectly cut out marshmallows. We're going to be making marshmallows at the end of this video. You'll see I let my kids help, and just letting go of everything being perfect and letting our kids take some control is going to go such a long way in the kitchen. And just again, going back to the first topic of teaching their kids about being a godly human and offering kindness and grace in our spaces and not just pushing them away and trying to take full control of this area in the kitchen or wherever it be in your home. If you don't love to cook and maybe you're doing cleaning or you're sewing or doing another task that's kind of a hobby for you, inviting them in and letting them kind of be in your space teaches them so much. Last but not least, let's talk about teaching our children to properly handle money. So this is one I'm very new at because I am still a young mom. My oldest is only 5, so I haven't really taught my kids how to properly spend and save money yet, but we are starting early. So this starts with letting them have a little piggy bank, letting them learn the value of money, teaching them what money means, how we use money, how we don't idolize money, but we know that money is important for our society today. And I think this has been so overlooked in the past few generations because I used to be a teacher, a high school teacher, and there were so many students of mine that knew nothing about saving, writing checks, balancing bank accounts, monitoring bank accounts, opening bank accounts, in any form of money. They just knew that money was almost indispensable and that it was always going to be coming at them. And that is just absurd to not teach our children that and think that they will just figure it out along the way. And I think that's why so many today struggle financially. So it's so important that we teach our kids this early on. It will keep them from struggling in a multitude of ways. So again, I'm very new at this. I'm not saying I'm perfect at this. My kids are young, but they know sort of the value of money and that we don't idolize it, that we trust that God is always going to provide what we need. We do steward our money well. We tithe our money. We talk about all of that. So just a reminder to start early with teaching your children to properly handle money. So as I speak all of these things over myself, I want this to be a reminder for me and you, hopefully, that the Lord has encouraged you as well through this topic of teaching our children. And let's just end with a word from Him. But Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me. Don't stop them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to those who are like children." Matthew 19:4. And then in Deuteronomy 11:18 and 19, "Commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these words of mine. Tie them to your hearts and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Teach them to your children. Talk about them when you are home, when you are on the road, and when you're going to bed, and when you're getting up." So that is more of a reiteration of the verse we started out with. It's spoken about again in Deuteronomy. It must be very important to the Lord to constantly teach our children, to model to our children all day long. When we're at home, when we're away, when we're going to bed, all day long. They are learning from us, they are watching us, and our actions and our behaviors are the biggest teachers for our children, which can be a scary thought at times, but can be so beautiful how much we can model and teach our children just by how we act as mothers. Thank you all for joining me today, and I will talk to y'all in my next video.